So this is my mom, and we just did the book tag, and today we're gonna be sharing with you our top 5 favorite classic novels. And my mom's a great reader, and she inspired us all to also love to read. My number 5 book would be Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and this was the first novel that I was ever really proud of that I had read. In my memory, it was 3rd grade. That seems really young. But I swear I remember reading it in 3rd grade and crying about Beth, and being really upset about it. But I love that book. I think it still holds up, I think, actually pretty well. Jo March is such a iconic character, just so independent and different, and somebody definitely that that's the kind of character that I really related to.
Everyone relates to Jo.
Second half, which is really a second novel, originally isn't quite as strong. It's a little more soapy, but I still really enjoy it. So
yeah,
that'd be my
enjoyed
number
that
5
book too. In fact, I never read it as a youth, but I read it when my kids were growing up, and so I saw it from an adult perspective, and I did really enjoy it too. I'll say my number 5 is My Antonia by Willa Cather, and I really love this book. I love Willa Cather. My Antonia is an immigrant from some Slavic country with her family, and Jim is the person looking back on his life. And so beautiful. There's so much uplifting about it, even though there's so many bad things that happen, and actually you could write a tragedy about My Antonia because things don't work out exactly right for her, and a lot of the other immigrants. I mean, things, but it's just so uplifting instead. They're just wonderful characters, and you love them, and you love the West.
It's great.
I really loved it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Number 4 pick, it would probably have to be Jane Eyre. She does such a good job of creating, just building the romantic tension once it gets to the Rochester, segments, and you really get the feel that these are sort of wounded souls that have finally found somebody, and has finally found a kindred spirit, and it's just so heartbreaking, for the longest time, and I guess it's just sort of that classic kind of romantic tension of these people that can't be together because of this big problem, but that you want them to be together because you like them, and so you're on the journey, and it's got a great atmosphere.
Some of the stuff in there is just a little cliche. It's almost kind of amusing and enjoyable in that way, because the cries in the night and the secrets.
Yeah,
and the attic
true.
kind of.
That's
I don't know.
True.
In that, it would be Bleak House by Dickens. This is a book that I really love. It has a female protagonist that is actually more active than a lot of Dickens. She's actually has more control of her own fate, and she's not just really blank slate ingenue. That Esther is a wonderful character, I think, and is willing to, sacrifice to help other people, and it is long drawn out. It's about the legal system, so in England, and about people getting caught up in the hope for some sort of settlement that will benefit them, and kind of the ruination of their lives because of it. But anyone who's caught up in our legal system, then sometimes it's not that far off.
My next favorite is Christmas Carol. Who follows my blog knows I love Christmas Carol. I did Scrooge Month last Christmas, and I reviewed 35 different versions of Christmas Carol. Everything from Smurfs to Muppets to George C. Scott to everything else.
I didn't know there were that many.
Yeah. And for the most part, there are some definite turkeys in there, but almost all of them I enjoyed on some level. I just like that story so much. A Christmas Carol, I just think it's a story. I really respond to stories about redemption and to stories about, that there are no lost causes. And, Scrooge is somebody who has just, and I also really respond to any story about work. And in reality, Christmas Carol is a story about a man who is given like, if you painted it in different colors, he could be a hero. Here's this man, and he's dedicated his whole life to his work, and he could be the CEO. He could be the new, he could be on Shark Tank or something like that these days. He has closed himself off from Christ and from hope and from anything that really gives that work any kind of real meaning. And so that's why he has these visitations, and that are the gift from a friend of his that he didn't even value, really, that friend.
So you might be surprised at this one. Lord of the Rings. I probably read that 3 times before I was 16. I mean, the whole series. I lived Lord of the Rings when I was young.
This is a surprise. Actually, it was surprising.
I read it when I was really young. I read the whole thing, and I loved it so much. And then I read it to my brother, and I read it to my sister. And when I read it to my son. I love it. I love the characters. They're so, Sam is so...
Who really becomes the hero of the story, I think. It starts out with Frodo as kind of the hero, but I think that pretty quickly on, Samwise becomes the one who...
I have a son named Sam.
Yeah.
And
I never even thought about that, but yeah.
I thought of it as among many other things, but I don't know. The people in it are so great, and that is a story that doesn't have all that much subtlety, because it's the evil versus good. But the characters are still so engaging, and it's with the movies and everything, it's become a big thing again.
Next one is Pride and Prejudice.
That's mine too.
Oh, really? I feel like it's such a cliche for women to like Pride and Prejudice, but it's brilliant. It's so well done. I mean, the way that she's able to kind of build the characters bit by bit by bit, and that it's something that has, I say that almost every particularly romantic comedy of the last however long it's been is either based on Taming of the Shrew or or Pride and Prejudice. And what so many of them get wrong when they try to do the opposites attract, we really hate each other, we hate each other, but we really love each other. What so many of them get wrong is they forget that in Pride and Prejudice, they have so many scenes that show that Lizzie and Darcy are very, very likable. Oh, that Darcy really isn't a snob because we like Bingley, and Bingley is a good person, and he loves Darcy. So we know that there's more to him, which creates all these layers, which makes it interesting. And it's funny, it's very... I think that people that think, oh, it's just a romance novel, I think are really missing out on the richness of the characters and the forgiveness and the journey that they go on.
Well, it's interesting that it's a romance novel, but really she has such a bleak view of marriage.
Yeah, that's so true. Pride and Prejudice, like there's, like when she says no, I mean she doesn't just say no. Yeah, she basically, if we were the last man on earth that I could ever marry, and like we forget like how bold that would have been for that era. For Lizzie, a person with basically no dowry, no nothing, for her to refuse after Charlotte Lucas has just married Mr. Collins of all people, so what a contrast there. And for her to refuse someone like Darcy with Pemberley and everything like that, that was incredibly bold.
I love the personal growth after that. It comes after that, where he actually changes. Mm-hmm. He's humiliated by that and actually looks inward and changes himself, and then she does too.
Mm-hmm. My favorite classic is also my favorite book is North and South, and it's very similar in some ways to Pride and Prejudice, but it adds a sort of social commentary. It adds there's sort of a deepness that it's more of a drama than, and I think that whereas like in Pride and Prejudice, only minor flaw I can find is I feel like Darcy falls in love with Lizzie in basically a weekend. You know, when she's caring for her sister, goes from like being a joke to him to all of a sudden he's in love with her and her fine eyes. But whereas like in North and South, they're really they both start with these prejudices against each other, and that Margaret is you know convinced that he's a brute and that he's not a gentleman. And they just change so subtly, little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit, and until you know there's this great climax that to me feels totally authentic, and you know, she jumps out in front of the mob. I just love the side characters. I think are so strong. I think I love the way that she doesn't tell you kind of what to think about the laborers, that you're just allowed to say, here's this side, what do you think? And like it's just so emotionally devastating what happens to Thornton, and him losing that after it's kind of like what we said, that if Darcy was a self-made man, then it would be Thornton. You know, and so it's like pride, but it's like a special pride because he was disgraced. His father disgraced the family, and he brought it back, brought the family back, and so there's just like this special pride that he has, and just to see, and his mother, you know, is such a great character. And
there's so many really strong characters.
Well, and she writes really with such a modern female voice, like about the way. I mean, when you think that she was writing the same time as Dickens, it's hard to believe because her women are so much more empowered and stronger, and they have their own opinions and voice and everything. And
so. She does. Margaret goes out, you know, by herself to deliver goods to the poor and stuff in bad sections of town. I mean, she does things that she thinks are right, but they're really not. You know, she doesn't worry about having the chaperone and all the things that the conventions that most people during most novels of that time, you know, follow. Then Margaret. Yeah. So she's a very modern character, and she's definitely in charge of her own fate.
Yeah.
My favorite book is Middlemarch by George Eliot. And I know Rachel doesn't like this much. Have you read it?
No, I have read it, and I do appreciate it.
I love her characters. Yeah. She writes with great compassion.
Yeah.
To the human condition. You know, Dorothea could be a silly, you know, rich girl. In fact, she doesn't want to be that. She wants to be someone that, you know, whose life has meaning. She wants to do something important. She makes a terrible mistake in what that will be. And I don't know, but it's rather than seeing her with contempt, then we see her with great, you know, pity, and she learns and grows and changes. And even the villain, you know, of the book, Bulstrode, is seen with pity, and his family, you know, is seen with great pity as his.
Is it Will Ladislaw?
Will Ladislaw is, I mean, and he is just like a bright character. You just practically see, you know, glints of light flickering off of him. He's so full of life and love, and you're just like, you fall in love with him too, even though he is kind of a weak character a weak person in some ways. He his love helps him to be stronger, to grow, and to develop into a stronger person.
Well, it's one of those books that you're like, or I don't know, if you've ever like seen a couple and you're like, how the heck did they get together? Like that abounds in Middlemarch, and you're just thinking like, what are these people doing together?
Couples in Middlemarch that I really love is Fred and Mary Garth, and Fred is a very weak person.
They're good.
Totally, you know, I mean, he could have just become a dissolute person, a gambler, and terrible. But Mary is a really strong. I mean, she's been raised to be really strong, and even though she is from a little bit lower class, she sees something in Fred, and they, you know, they make it together, and it's that was a really, you know, fantastic subplot of the book. I think there were there's a lot in it about how people marry the wrong person. I mean, Fred is probably the only one that married the right person in the book, but there's some resolution in the end, and I don't know. I just love the way she treats her characters.
I think it's one that, especially, I think if I was married, I would especially even like it even more.
Adam B.
No, Middlemarch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our top 5.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It'll be good. And I think those are all. If any of you guys like any of those books, put in your comments below. Let me know. And thanks so much. And
thanks, Rach.
we'll talk to you later. Bye.